So next up, we have Nova Royalty. Nova is a royalty company focused on copper and nickel assets, which are building blocks for clean energy products. Its assets are being advanced by majors including Teck, Newmont, Antofagasta, First Quantum, and Rio Tinto. Nova is listed on the TSX Venture Exchange with the ticker NOVR, and it's also OTCQB listed with the ticker NOVRF. Alex Sukernick is the president and CEO of Nova, who will take us through the presentation. Hi, Alex.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, excellent. Well, look forward to taking everyone through. Let me share my screen. Excellent. Well, look, I think at this point, everyone in the audience probably should know what the energy transition is and what's happening in the world. And we started the company 3 years ago, believing that this is where the world is heading. At the time when we started the company and a copper nickel royalty company, I think a good question came to us: why are these metals important? Because if you look at the history of the royalty sector, it's really been very much dominated by the precious metals theme, and for good reason, because in precious metals you've had very strong macroeconomic support among people who felt like they had to own gold and silver. We took the view back then that people would also come to the view that they would need to own copper and nickel, because these are the fundamental commodities of the entire energy transition. Every time you drive an electric car, you don't drive a gas car. Every time you use a wind or a solar farm, you're not using oil or coal. And so what we saw was a fundamental change in how the world was going to live. And as a first mover, we felt that we had a great opportunity to build really a great company focused on the best copper and nickel projects in the world. And that's basically what we have done. So step by step, we've built a portfolio really of some of the best copper nickel projects out there. It's Taka, First Quantum, Nova Union, which is Teck Resources, the Dumont project in Quebec, the largest undeveloped nickel project in the world. And we've really built a company rather than buying the royalties from the companies themselves. It's very challenging to walk into a tier one company and originate the royalty. It almost never happens, actually. We've actually bought these royalties from the third-party royalty holders. And so more specifically, these are royalties that have been sitting in the families of the prospectors that found the assets a long time ago and then wind up selling them to the major companies for development. And so very often, what we've done with our team, which is globally focused, you're talking to people about buying the family heirloom, which has been in the families often for generations. And because we're the only company which is public, which is focused on this theme, it's a unique opportunity for people to monetize these royalties at a time when there really wasn't a clear market for them. And so we're very happy with where we are so far in terms of having a foundation, and it'll be good to walk everyone through. When you look at what's happening right now, it's actually something we haven't seen yet, I believe. This is the first time I think we're seeing a globally coordinated industrial revolution, in a sense that we're changing the way that we live, we're changing the way we power our homes, we're changing how we move, we're changing the way that we think about emissions. And so I think the one goal that's begun to be crystallized in terms of across the global community is the idea of net zero by 2050. And when you look at what has to be done today, in terms of investment decisions to get to that point, you realize that we're very much behind already. Because although 30 years feels like a long time, you actually don't have that much time to have a complete transformation. And when you look at the supply chain, the key building blocks of that are going to be copper and nickel. So the investment that you're going to need in major copper and nickel projects, it really needs to happen in the very near future. And it's one of the things we always talk about is that the big companies whom you would think would be driving that process are still very hesitant to do it. And so where we wanted to position ourselves was really get royalties on the best tier one projects in preparation for their investment, which will have to occur here. And it's just a matter of how it has to materialize. The reason that we wanted to participate in this trend as a royalty company is because mining is just a really difficult business. When you look at all the risks that companies have to go through, from exploration to development to production to permitting to increased taxes, royalties, and the like. It really does, it really does earn its name as a very risky industry. However, at the top end of their industry are truly generational mines, which, if you look at the history of the mining sector, have really been by far the best performers in the whole sector. So what we felt was really an incredible opportunity was, as a first mover, to go buy royalties on these generational mines from individuals and families and the like, and put that into one company, public company, which is diversified, has a very low cost structure, is not subject to the same risks that a miner would be subject to, but also gives investors really unique exposure to what's happening. And so, when you look at the big copper nickel mines, they'll go for 40, 50, 70, 100 years. And having a diversified portfolio of royalties on that, we felt was something that, an opportunity to create a company like that wasn't something we felt we could pass up. And that was really the genesis behind what we tried to do. This is just a bit in terms of the things that we've done. As I said before, we started the company in 2018. We spent 2 years private in terms of refining the strategy, building the team and the network, making sure that when we went public, we were able to really scale the business. And we went public on October 1st, 2020. It's been a pretty busy time ever since. In the first week, we announced multiple transactions on Janice Lake and Taka Taka, and then we continued with Twin Metals, our second Taka Taka transaction, and on Vizcachitas. When I look at all the deals we've done, I have to say my favorite is definitely the second Taka Taka transaction. When we did the first transaction, they were both done with the same group of people. And we bought a 0.24% NSR for a mix of roughly 80% cash and 20% stock. And that was understandable. We were just a new company. We were only public for a week when we announced the first transaction. And then we got to know the people who transacted with us very well over time. And after a couple of months, after the first deal, they said that they wanted to sell the second piece. And after a discussion, they wanted to really make a clear vote of confidence in Nova. So they took the second deal, 80% equity and 20% cash. And so as an entrepreneur, when you're trying to build something you can be proud of, it's really great to have that vote of confidence, and really one of the true standout projects out there. We were fortunate that right after we bought the Taka Taka royalty, First Quantum announced their first maiden reserve, and then they also highlighted the production decision for 2023, 2024. When you look at the pipelines of the major companies, there's actually very few at the moment projects that are greenfield projects in their pipelines that are actually proceeding forward toward production. A lot of that has to do with the majors. Typically, once they put a project into production, they really spend a lot more time and money into it. So they expand production, they do additional exploration in the area. And so the hardest thing to do in our entire business, I think, is really getting a royalty on a project which is major quality. So having a sizable NSR, 0.42% NSR now on Taka Taka, which First Quantum has been lighted as moving ahead since last fall, and really, I think, one of the standout copper projects in the world, 3 billion tons and growing in the great jurisdiction, the Salta province in Argentina, which is really one of the standout provinces in terms of being hospitable to mining. It's very exciting for a company like ours. And when you combine that with the other things we have, whether it's NOVR Union, which is Newmont and Teck, or Vizcachitas, which is one of the largest development projects in the Americas, it's really super exciting to be building this portfolio at this particular time. A little bit about our royalty portfolio. Again, I touched on that earlier. Really, it's 5 major assets at the moment. I'd like to run through them briefly. Taka Taka, as I mentioned before, again, really one of the standout assets out there. First Quantum is a first-tier operator, really one of the great entrepreneurial companies out there that became a major in the recent past, and so we're very excited to hold this royalty. NOVR Union, this is a joint venture between Newmont and Teck. We have a royalty, and we have a 2% NSR on copper revenue and about 20% of the mine plan of the La Fortuna project, which is the large high-grade piece of the property. So La Fortuna is right now about 682 million ton reserve, well over 1 billion ton, including resources, at about 0.9% copper equivalent, which is very, very high grade for a deposit that size. And it's actually hasn't even been drilled that much. The deposit right now goes down to about 500 meters, which is not much for a deposit like that. These deposits often go way well below a kilometer. And actually, shortly after we bought the royalty in 2020, Newmont and SAC petitioned the Chilean government for a $152 million drilling program to explore the deep portions of the deposit. So look, we're excited to see whenever that occurs, and it's great to have a deposit which has been mentioned in the pipeline of both Newmont and Teck. Vizcachitas, we acquired that royalty recently back in February 2020 from Resource Capital Funds, one of the best known investors in the sector. Resource Capital has emerged as the project's primary backer. They now own about 20% of the company, of the project, of the equity. We came in and we picked up about 1/3 of their royalty position, which is on top of that. And we thought that with very strong sponsorship, this is really one of the few deposits out there which is not owned by a major, which can transition to a major. And that's really when we talk about how we underwrite our strategy in the deposits, you really have to be in the big camps. You have to be in places that the majors will want to focus on for 30, 50, 100 years. That's how they think, and because that's really where all the copper production comes from. When you look at the sector, you realize there's not really that level of small to mid miners that you see in the precious metal space. I believe something around 2/3 of the world's copper production comes from deposits making at least 100,000 tons of copper a year. For perspective's sake, that's $1 billion a year business today. So Canada will have one mine that fits that criteria, and that's Highland Valley at the moment. So really, you have to be in the big camps. We were very fortunate. We did the deal with Vizcachitas in February, and in May they got a drilling permit for additional drilling to complete their PFS. This is already a 2 billion ton resource, and we look forward to seeing what happens to it from here. And then Queens Road Capital, which is also a very, very well-known mining investor, invested in the project as well. And interestingly, they refer to it as potentially the most advanced copper project in South America. So copper porphyry project in South America. So it's great to see when you make an investment, and we've seen that both Taca Taca and NOVR Union and now Vizcachitas, where you just see third-party validation from really serious, credible people, and that's what we always hope to see. Moving on to the nickel side, the Dumont project, really clearly the standout in the nickel universe in North America. When you look at the whole nickel sector right now, it's really shaping up to be an industry that's going to feed the automotive battery supply chain. And when you look at North America, Dumont is already fully permitted. It's by far the most advanced. It's the world's second largest nickel reserve, period. So really, this could be the linchpin of the whole automotive industry supply chain going forward. I believe an article came out last week sometime that mentioning that the project's owner, Waterton, was looking to sell it and for a high price. We'll see how that goes, but clearly there's a lot of interest in this project given its unique features. Quebec is as good a jurisdiction as you can find, fully permitted. You can actually have a full automotive supply chain here, which is really how we look at nickel projects, and I think is a sensible way to look at it. So it's very exciting to see that. And then lastly, Twin Metals. We picked up the royalty for a small amount in November. We really look. This is the key copper nickel camp in the United States. It has 34% of all U.S. copper reserves, 95% of all U.S. nickel reserves. It's an extremely strategic location. That said, there's some political issues in terms of permitting and the like. So this is something that we'll keep an eye out on over time. But it's definitely helped to have some early exposure to this and just see how it progresses. We also, once in a while, we buy exploration royalties on things that we like at reasonable prices. And last September, right before going public, we picked up a royalty on a project called Janus Lake, which is a Rio Tinto project in Saskatchewan, which they've been exploring very heavily. And so far, the results have been encouraging. But again, it's still very early days. What did catch our eye, though, is that Rio is very serious about it, and given the focus on good jurisdictions and large camps, seeing something that could be a meaningful mine potentially one day in a place like Saskatchewan is something that catches your eye. So once in a while, we will make those investments at the right price, and so we're just keen to see what happens from here. Just a little bit about the team. So we really have, I think, as strong a team as you could hope for. All across. Management board, strategic advisors, really some of the strongest, most credentialed people in our sector are a part of the company at this point. Whether it's you're talking about Brett Heath, who is our non-executive chairman, he founded Metalla Royalty and Streaming. We co-founded Nova together. Andrew Gravel, who was formerly the head of Extrata Copper M&A, Doug Silver, who is the founder of International Royalty Corp, and the Orion Royalty Group, and then Parvi Farsangi, who was the former chief operating officer of Valley Inco, and he ran the world's second largest nickel business, or Darren Wagner, multiple time prospector of the year in Canada. So really, you need to have a very strong team all across the board, from every perspective, to really succeed in this business, because our job is to pursue the global universe of assets wherever they may be. So we've got multiple people in South America. Christian Rios, he's one of our people in Lima. Really having an exceptional person like that who understands both the local side and the Canadian side and the capital markets. It's really essential to be able to work quickly and efficiently across cultural lines. When we did the Taka deal, for example, we went through it in record time, but we also had a very good processing team involved to get these things done. And that's really been a huge competitive advantage for us over time. Again, just a little bit in terms of the royalty model. It's the key thing to really explain is that most of the work we've done so far has been with third-party owners, and we really feel like we're the natural owner of these assets, because in a diversified public company, you can bring value to these things in a way that is not possible to do for somebody who just sits in a pre-production asset. So we've been able to reach really, I think, win-win deals with both the prospectors and the royalty owners, where we take really high-quality assets, we put them into the public company for a mix of cash and stock, and so far, I think it's been a great model. As the company matures and we grow, we'll definitely look to do more originations in terms of creating new royalties, but we'd like to mature and grow the company and get to a certain size level, certainly, before we get very serious about that. Again, this is a little bit more about the royalty model. For the third-party owners, really, it's the ideal vehicle because they can get cash and they can also get equity and the upside in the vehicle, which really wasn't possible before. And because we started early and we already have a good foundation, and now we're really reaching to a critical mass, we can achieve the level of diversification that you really need in this business to be successful, because without diversification, you're just vulnerable to any one thing happening and you never want to be in that position. So having an ability to diversify across really high quality assets, that's an opportunity fundamentally that comes across once. If you start early and you focus and you really execute on what you can do, then I think that's there. So we're really excited about where we are at the moment. As far as our growth, look, we've been doing the same thing since we started the company. We built relationships around the world in the key mining camps. We really see ourselves as the royalty company that has exposure to the most strategic assets in the world on the upstream side. And so that's what we've been doing. And that's what the execution record is. Right now, it's a very exciting time for us because we're really getting ready for that second leg of transactions that we're about to embark upon. And we'd like to see the company go from a foundation to something that's properly diversified with critical mass and hopefully a real player in the sector. And a lot of that deal pipeline we've been working on for a long time. That's why we spent 2 years effectively as a private company. So it's exciting right now to be able to show the market what we're doing. Just a little bit about the capital structure here. Pretty straightforward. We've got about 79 million shares outstanding. We've had great shareholder support throughout. BD Capital gave us a financing facility right before we went public. One of the wealthiest investors in Canada gave us a $50 million financing facility for what was only a $20 million company at the time, but right before going public. And really, whether it is BD Capital or the other shareholders that come in, from the very beginning, they really believe in the strategy. They see what the company can do, and so it's been exciting to have him here for the growth. And look, it's still very, very early days for us, I think, as far as where we are. Again, just whatever time we have left here, it's really where we are. I think is an underappreciated time. The energy transition is really the strongest thing I've ever seen. I've read a lot of history over the years, and it's a subject that interests me. So it's almost like you have to rub your eyes a little bit to really appreciate where you are. I've never seen a situation where all the governments around the world and institutions are really driving toward the same changes, using the same tools. And I do think that one thing that hasn't been fully appreciated over time by people is how much it's going to stress the supply chain, particularly the upstream. And really, it's something that I think there's going to have to be a resolution, because you can look at any research report that comes out there, whether it's Goldman Sachs or Jefferies or anybody else, everybody sees massive copper and nickel deficits coming. And I mean, people are sounding the alarm. At the same time, the mining companies are sort of not sure yet exactly how to deal with it. So something is going to have to give. You're going to need to produce very large amounts of metal to make this happen. So for us, really, we saw an opportunity that comes around once. And we now have royalties and acquiring more royalties, and really the most important assets that will be required really to drive this whole energy transition. And so it's a very exciting time.
That's great. Well, thanks for the presentation. We're at the 20-minute mark. I know there was a question from the audience, but we'll email that to you. Thank you for the presentation. I know the company is, has some significant assets and adds a lot of credibility. And the shareholder base is really interesting as well. So congratulations on putting together such a great royalty company, and looking forward to seeing some of the other deals that you're working on.
That's great. Thank you very much, everyone, for having me, and I look forward to being back.